All right, back to our regular programming. Just in case you didn't have enough stuff to do today, just as a reminder that, very shortly, there'll be a briefing here by Navi Pillay and Chris Sidoti of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. Then at 2 p.m., briefing by Francesca Albanese, Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., joint briefing by Arif Hussein from the World Food Program, the chief economist there, and Rain Paulson, director of FAO's Food and Agriculture Organization, their Office of Emergencies and Resilience. They will brief you on the Global Hunger Crisis Report. At 11:30, there'll be a briefing by Eric Moos, Pablo de Grief, and Vrinda Gover, Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine. Then at the briefing, which I assume will be delayed a little bit, we'll have Nicholas Kumjan, head of the Independent Investigative Mechanism for Myanmar. She will brief you on the situation in Myanmar. Thank you for paying attention. This morning, our Secretary General was in Cali in Colombia, where he spoke at an event on plastic pollution organized by the UN Environmental Program. That is part of his presence at COP16 on biodiversity, or COP16. He noted that next month, member states will meet in Busan in Korea to negotiate a multilateral solution to end plastic pollution, a solution that is vital for people, planet, and prosperity alike. He warned that plastic pollution is everywhere, all around us, and even inside us, from our seas to our blood to our brains. We are choking on plastic, he said. The Secretary General added that in Busan, member states will have the chance to deliver on these promises and agree on a global treaty to end plastic pollution once and for all. And this morning, he delivered remarks at a press event. The opening remarks were shared with you. And we're working on the Q&A right now. He also welcomed during the remarks the renewed efforts of President Petro and his government to accelerate the implementation of the final peace agreement, including through the quote-unquote shock plan that focuses on concrete aspects to improve the quality of life in the prioritized territories. The Secretary General called on everyone to not be sidetracked from the path of dialogue. Quick update for you from the humanitarian end on Lebanon, where a joint OCHA-UNICEF mission today delivered essential supplies to approximately 800 households in the village of Sarafan in southern Lebanon. The supplies included water, hygiene, dignity kits, water testers, children's clothes, and first aid kits. Also today, a convoy by UNRWA delivered 5,000 liters of fuel for generators to ensure the operations of water wells and sanitation facilities at the Bor Shamali Palestinian refugee camp near the South Litani River functioned. The situation continues to deteriorate amidst escalating hostilities. Today, Israeli army issued displacement orders for all residents of Baalbek city in the east of the country to evacuate the city immediately. This prompted mass displacement and panic among residents. Strikes subsequently began several hours later, and displacement orders were issued for several localities in Nabatea in the south of Lebanon. Imran Riza, the humanitarian coordinator for Lebanon, deplored the extensive harm inflicted on civilians and the destruction of civilian infrastructure. He called for the violence to end immediately and reminded the parties of the conflict that they must take all feasible precautions to avoid and minimize harm to civilians and civilian objects. Meanwhile, our FAO colleagues say the rural communities are facing difficulties in conflict impacted by agriculture. Moving to Gaza, further to the situation there, our colleagues in the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs are urging the Israeli authorities to urgently grant access for critical humanitarian activities in Jabalya, Beit Lahia, and Beit Hanoun in North Gaza. Our colleagues from OCHA emphasize the need for secure conditions to deliver aid, conduct relief operations safely, given the ongoing military operations there. We and our humanitarian partners are set to urgently implement critical activities in those areas soon as Israeli authorities reopen North Gaza. Also just want to say that the Secretary General was deeply shocked by reports of an Israeli airstrike in Beit Lahia in North Gaza that took place early yesterday. Reportedly left 90 Palestinians killed or missing, including 25 children. This tragic loss of life, he said, particularly among vulnerable people, yet again underscores devastating human impact of the ongoing conflict, which is intensifying in North Gaza. The Secretary General unequivocally condemns the widespread killing and injury of civilians and the ongoing displacement of the population. All parties to the conflict must comply by their obligations under international law, including the obligation to respect and protect civilians. This includes humanitarian workers and first responders who play a vital role in mitigating suffering and providing life-saving assistance. The obstruction of their work only deepens the suffering of the population. Aid must flow freely and safely. The toll of the violence in Gaza is unconscionable. There must be an immediate ceasefire, and he reiterates once again his call for the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages being held in Gaza. The time to stop the bloodshed is now. Also, throughout October, we've noted that North Gaza has been largely inaccessible, with very few exceptions, amidst reports of high casualties, direct hits on overwhelmed medical facilities, and widespread family displacement and separation. OCHA also emphasizes the need for direct supply routes from areas west to these areas, rather than routing all aid through Gaza City, which is the current imposed practice. Meanwhile, in the south, OCHA visited two locations in Absan, in east of Khan Yunis, to assess the situation of displaced families. One was the Saudi Center for Cultural Heritage in Absan al-Kabir, which provides mental health support for children, internet access for students, and operates a community kitchen for more than 500 families. The second location was Al-Mahraba site, which hosts 2,000 people. At this site, there are currently no health services, limited power, and insufficient water facilities. Quick update for you from Haiti, where our colleagues in the UN mission there report that between July and September, over 1,200 people were killed and more than 500 injured by gang violence, as well as in the fight against gangs. During the same period, the mission also documented 170 kidnappings for ransom. As we've mentioned in the past, violence primarily took place in Port-au-Prince area, as well as the Artibonite department. The UN mission is concerned about the continuing acts of sexual violence committed by gangs against women and girls, as well as the impact of violence on children. During the reporting period, at least 59 boys and girls were killed, injured, or abducted. Children are also the victim of sexual violence, human trafficking, and gang recruitment. Finally, our colleagues' data highlights the persistence, allegations of summary executions involving specialized units of the Haitian National Police. In this context, the mission notes initiatives from Haitian judicial authorities to fight impunity, but also continues to call on the international community to keep Haiti on its agenda and to speed up the full and speedy deployment of the multinational security support mission. Turning to Sudan, where the situation is not much as tragic, we and our humanitarian partners are extremely concerned about the plight of civilians who continue to be trapped by hostilities and are unable to escape, as well as for those of the safety of those who've chosen to move. As we've been telling you, the situation, particularly in Al Jazeera state, is alarming. Local authorities are telling our humanitarian colleagues that more than 27 women and girls between the age of 6 and 60 were subjected to rape and sexual violence. They're also reported that at least 6 health facilities have been attacked, with 2 health workers reportedly killed. These attacks on health facilities have severely disrupted the delivery of health services in the area. Less than 1/4 of the health facilities are functioning in the worst impacted areas in that part of across Sudan. The International Organization for Migration tells us that nearly 120,000 people, that's about 24,000 families, have been displaced from some of the localities in Al Jazeera state just in the past 10 days. We and our partners, and particularly local organizations and volunteers, which are doing great work, are providing hot meals, food, health services, and other supplies to thousands of displaced people in Gedaref and Kassala states. We reiterate that all parties to the conflict in Sudan, that civilians must be protected, and including allowing them to leave for safer areas. Attacks directed against civilians and civilian objects are prohibited. Constant care must be taken to spare them. Perpetrators of serious violations must be held to account. And you must have seen on television today the devastating images of torrential rains that have caused severe floods in and around Valencia in the south of Spain. The Secretary General extends his condolences to the families of those who've lost their lives and expresses his full solidarity with the government and the people of Spain. We stand ready to assist in whichever way we can. Valencia, as you may know, is also our home. A lot of our UN colleagues live there, as it hosts our Global Service Center base, which is an important logistics hub for the entire UN system. And just to note that back here, Caroline Ziadeh, head of the UN Interim Administration in Kosovo, briefed the council members on the latest developments there. She said, although the situation on the ground remains fragile, her engagement with officials in Belgrade and Pristina, as well as with partners, she hopes for constructive dialogue constructive dialogue and peaceful relations. This afternoon, the council will hold a briefing on Ukraine. Assistant Secretary General Miroslav Yencha will brief. We'll try to get those remarks to you. And I have time for a few questions before we go to our guest, Maggie, Edie, Deji.
Thanks, Steph. You mentioned the evacuation orders for Baalbek City today in Lebanon. Baalbek is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. You have the Roman temples there. There was pictures today of smoke rising near them, not on them, but near them. I haven't seen any statements from UNESCO about the protecting them.
Well,
is the SG worried about?
Yes, I mean, clearly, we do not want to see any harm done to people and also to their cultural heritage. I think one of the things we've seen in conflicts in recent years is the destruction of cultural heritage that can never be replaced. So UNESCO sites do need to be protected.
And should that site be blown up, would that be a war crime?
I can't answer that with any definitive answer, but I can tell we do not want to see any harm done to that place. Edie, letter of the Associated Press.
Thank you, Steph. A clarification on the rapes that you just mentioned in Sudan. Was that only in Jazeera State, or was that in the country?
That was, from what I gather, in Jazeera State. But as we know, there has been horrific instances of sexual violence in other parts of Sudan. But this one was particularly for Jazeera State.
And on Gaza, can we get an update on exactly what is getting into the people in need in the north and the central and southern parts of Gaza?
I mean, a lot of that is available on the OCHA dashboard, but we'll try to get you an update as well. Deji, China Central Television.
Thank you, Stéphane Dujarric, spokesperson for the Secretary General of the United Nations. Two questions. First, do you have any update of the oil tanker of Yemen? It's been quite a long time. I think UNDP has to have some plan, right?
That's a very good question. So we'll get you an answer.
Okay. Second, just moments ago, the GA just adopted a resolution called Necessity of Ending the Economic, Commercial, and Financial Embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba. This is the 32nd year that the GA adopted this resolution, with only 2 against America and Israel. So I just want to know, what's the position of the Secretary General on this issue?
Well, I mean, I think I answered that question yesterday, but our observation is that, as you mentioned, this is not the first time this resolution has been voted. It has not been implemented. And meanwhile, I think the economic and burden on Cuba and the Cuban people continues.
So will the Secretary General urge the USA to
We
follow
urge for
the-
all member states to follow all resolutions. Mike?
No full introduction?
No, if anyone needs no full introduction, no, go ahead.
I'll take that as a compliment. I
Yes.
guess. Have there been any initial discussions at any level between the UN/UNRWA and Israeli officials, COGAT, elsewhere, about the possible implementation of the laws that were passed on Monday?
I mean, the communication was, as you know, the letter sent by the Secretary General yesterday to the Prime Minister of Israel. As I mentioned yesterday, there's been no official contact, despite efforts between UNRWA and the Israeli government, their counterpart, which is the Foreign Ministry. There remains operational contacts on a daily basis, of course. But you know, our position is that we do not want to see this law implemented. We hope it does not get implemented, because if it does, it will have devastating consequences. And it is clear for us that there is no replacement for UNRWA. And I would say that we were very heartened to read the message, the press statement issued by the Security Council on that earlier today.
Even within the operational, I mean, this is an operational issue in addition to a legal issue. Even at the operational level.
Listen, on the operational issue, if UNRWA has to close its health centers, its schools, its nutrition program, all of that, what will happen, as warranted under international law, is that Israel will then have to take responsibility for delivering these services to the people in areas under which they have authority.
Follow up to that. The letter from the Secretary General to the Prime Minister included a suggestion, a veiled threat, I don't know what you want to call it, that the case could be taken to the International Court of Justice. Is there a timeline?
No, it's not. It's not a veiled threat. It's just it's a statement of fact that in a number of legal instruments, and the ones on, I think this refers to privileges and immunities, if there is a disagreement between the parties, then there is a mechanism to try to resolve that disagreement, and this one goes through the International Court of Justice.
So what's the timeline on that? Do you wait
First of
until
all,
the laws are implemented?
the law has not been implemented. So, Michelle, and then I think we have to get our guests.
Just a quick follow-up on that. The law will bar UNRWA from operating in Israel.
Yeah.
So does the UN believe that it can continue to try and operate in Gaza and the West Bank?
No, listen, it is under Israel and also areas in which Israel controls. They will, if the law is fully implemented, UNRWA will not be able to operate in Gaza or the occupied West Bank.
And I guess no response from the Israeli Prime Minister to the letter?
Not to my knowledge. Goodbye, people. It's been a pleasure.